Welcome to Voices from the Cliff, a public affairs presentation of Briarcliff University. I'm your host, Ford Clark. On today's program, our guest is Dr. Theresa Engle, the chair of the Education Department at Briarcliff. Thanks for joining the program today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about who you are. Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. And I'm
It's
old,
very
so
loaded.
There's a
Very
large
loaded.
answer because I'm older. Anyway, I was born and raised in Sioux City. So went to public schools here in Sioux City. The furthest I've ever lived was Whiting, Iowa, which is about 35 miles from here. In terms so I have two younger siblings, and that kind of goes back to what I wanted to do. So when I was a little girl, my two younger brothers were my students, and I was always the teacher. At the end of the school year, we'd be sent home with our workbooks that we didn't finish. So I would force my brothers we actually had a little school desk in the basement. So I would have them be my students, and they weren't always well behaved. So, yeah.
So they got in trouble a lot.
Yeah, they got in trouble a lot. Yeah. So I knew from a young age. I always liked kids. I started babysitting, I think, when I was 12, and I did that for many years, and just have always loved to work with kids. So when I was in high school, I very, very distinctly remember when I was in 10th grade, the school counselor asked me what I wanted to do, if I wanted to go to college. And at that time, I was like, well, I want to be a teacher, but I also wanted to be a secretary. So this was in the late 70s, and it's not like it is now where, women would have any role they want. Back then, It was pretty much you either got married and stayed home and had your kids, or you were a teacher or a nurse or a secretary. That was pretty much my wheelhouse of what I wanted to do. So at that time, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So he pretty much put me on a track of someone who would probably be a mom or a secretary. Didn't have me be in classes that would have helped me to be in college. Well, anyway, when I was a senior in high school, I happened to have two study halls, and in one of the study halls, I worked in the school office. And I had this brilliant idea of asking the principal, would it be okay if in my other study hall I don't need it? Could I go back to the school I went to when I was in elementary school and go help? And so he allowed me to do that. Now, today it's very common. I mean, there are courses that students, but back then that was not a thing. So I had this special permission to do that, and I went back to my old school, and I was in a first grade classroom and absolutely loved it. And then that sealed the deal. I wanted to be a teacher. What's interesting is I originally wanted to teach lower elementary. I thought, first, second, third, maybe at the most is what I wanted. But then when you go into a teacher preparation program, they have you experience many grade levels, not just one. So I happened to be in a sixth grade classroom. Back then, Sioux City Schools was K to 6 instead of K to 5. So I was in a sixth grade room and found out it was a lot of fun, and I really liked it. So when I got my first job, I ended up teaching fifth grade and taught it for about 20 years. I taught in Whiting, Iowa for 2 years, and I taught at the Catholic school here in Sioux City for a year. When I did that, I was remedial math and reading, so I wasn't a regular classroom teacher. I assisted kids in that way. And then I got into the Sioux City schools, and I was there for about 20 years, and then I taught fifth grade before I came here.
Where'd you go to college? Where did you get your undergraduate, then your master's, and then your doctorate?
Okay, so I went to Morningside. Again, it was one of those things that I decided kind of at the last minute to go to college, and it was a mile from my mom and dad's house. So I lived at home my first year and went to school. So I went to Morningside, and then about 10 years after I started, I'd been teaching for about 10 years, and one of my friends I was teaching with said, hey, let's go get our master's degree. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. Well, my husband talked me into it, so my friend and I, we got our master's together through Morningside. That was the easiest at that time because back then we didn't have online. It wasn't an option. You either had to go there, and Morningside allowed me the flexibility to take classes here and there, and so that was pretty easy. And then when I came to Briarcliff, because I'm on the tenure track, I had to get my doctorate, that's a whole other story about all that because anyway, you'll probably ask me that later. But anyway, so I got my doctorate from USD in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in technology.
It's funny because we have this here at Briarcliff. We have this big rivalry in sports with Morningside, but so many of the educators here, we have this really friendly. I wouldn't call it a rivalry. A lot of friendliness between Morningside and us. I mean, a lot of teachers will teach at both places, Morningside and Briarcliff. So we really have this connection with Morningside on the scholarly side, even though there's this rivalry. In on the sports side, it's kind of funny. Even though I know some of our students, even though they're rivals, they have friends.
Oh yeah,
of
or
both
significant
sides.
others.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I just find that very significant that even though we consider ourselves these crosstown rivals, there's really this complex history between the two universities that is really intertwined and a lot of relationships between both places.
Definitely, I agree with that.
But you got your doctorate, and so you became really more than just an elementary teacher, and you came to Briarcliff. What drew you to Briarcliff?
Oh, I do believe that God has a path for us. And so it just so happened, it was Easter Sunday back in 2007. And during the school year, that was when the paper was delivered. I never looked at the paper, but for some reason, that Sunday, Easter Sunday in the afternoon, I was drawn to the newspaper, and I went to the want ads. And I saw this little box that said that Briarcliff was looking for a faculty member in the education department. And that fall before, I've had quite a few student teachers, but that fall of 2006, I had a student teacher from Briarcliff, my first one. She was phenomenal. And her university supervisor was Sister Kathy, who is now one of our board members. And anyway, so I had a great experience. So I see this little box, and looking through it, because I never considered teaching college. I mean, I loved teaching fifth grade. I thought that would be what I would do forever. But this little box and it said, you have to have this and this and this. I'm like, I have that. I'm like, that's really interesting. Well, my husband and my son was actually going to Briarcliff at the time, were in the same room but at a computer. And I just said to my son, I said, Billy, there's this opening at Briarcliff. Would you be okay if I applied for it? And he immediately said, yes, my friend's mom works at Briarcliff and he gets to go there for free. So anyway, that was kind of like, okay. So I hadn't made a resume for 20 years or anything like that. So I had to make the resume. I had to prepare. So I reached out to them and they called me. Again, this is before a lot of technology, so it was a lot of slow back and forth. They reached back to me and said, well, please come. We want you to do a teaching demonstration. And these are the students. So it was going to be a demonstration for students who wanted to teach elementary and high school. And so that was a whole like, oh my gosh, what do I teach? I teach 10-year-olds. So I came and I was here for the day, and it's parts I remember, but some of it was a blur. It was because it was something I hadn't even thought of to begin with. I applied, and a couple days later I'm here on campus. So it obviously went well because they offered me the job.
Well, you don't just luck into a job at Briarcliff. I'm going to give you a chance to brag about yourself a little bit. Obviously, you did a lot of things while you were an elementary teacher, a lot of accolades and things like that. Tell me some of the things that you did and some of the different positions that you were in. I mean, you talked about teaching fifth grade, but I mean, awards and accolades and things like that before you came to Briarcliff.
Well, I didn't get any awards, but I did have a lot of really great opportunities. So again, in working with kids, I learned over the years that as a teacher, I have so much of an impact on those kids. And so I had a lot of, to me, my successes were when students, their light bulbs came on, or their parents would come back, or the kids would come back to see me. And because to me, if they don't have to come see me and they choose to come see me, that's wonderful. And what was interesting is, so the way it works in school, and I don't know if this way anymore, but at the end of the school year or the first day of school, we'd get our list of the students we would have. And the fourth grade teachers would always come and say, oh, this kid, you better look out for this kid, or this kid is so good, blah, blah, blah. And I learned, don't listen to them, because what happened oftentimes was the students who they were trying to warn me about were my favorites, and I don't have favorites, but ones that I really got along well with, and they would be the ones who would come back to me. So I learned a lot of the things I learned were by mistakes I made. And I do believe that we learn more by our mistakes than successes. So, I mean, certainly wasn't, I wasn't the best teacher out of the gate. I learned a lot of things that I did wrong, and I tried to fix them. And I think being that reflective teacher is what's really powerful. So, yeah, I didn't get any awards when I was teaching, but to me, the awards and the rewards were if a parent or the children would come back to see me and tell me how they were doing and check in. And that, to me, that was the biggest thing. So when I came when I applied at Briarcliff, my focus was on the student, and it is to this day. Is my focus is on my students. I call them my kids because they are. When I was teaching fifth grade, I spent more time with those kids than my own kids, and certainly here, of course, my kids are grown and gone, but I spend more time with the kids here than with my own kids.
Well, obviously you did a lot of things right because they hired you here at Briarcliff.
Or maybe they were desperate. I don't know.
Well, so you came here to Briarcliff in 2007, correct? So that makes you one of the longest tenured teachers here.
So I've been told that I am the most senior female professor here on campus.
Very cool. Very cool. And you have climbed to department chair. So what are all the things that you've done since you've been here at Briarcliff? I know I've been here. I'm in my second semester. You were one of the first people that I met here at Briarcliff. You were, I believe, on the committee that hired me.
I was.
And you also were the person that helped me through orientation because you do that as well. You wear many hats.
I do.
Here at Briarcliff. If you could kind of take me through a little bit of that.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. So when I got the job at Briarcliff, I signed my contract to said tenure track. So I had no idea what that even meant. No clue. I'm just like, I was so excited to get the job because it was something new and different, and I was honored that they offered me the job. So I signed the contract not knowing, and then I found out, well, I have to go get my doctorate. So that was something that I was like, okay, whatever that means. First online class, that kind of thing. So when I came here, I was an instructor and I taught classes, and it was a big adjustment because I went from teaching content, just the information. I had to now teach, how do you teach that? So it was much more in depth than, here's how you write a complete sentence, but how do you teach kids how to write a complete sentence? So that took me some time to get used to that. So again, learning from my mistakes. And you probably remember me saying this, but course evaluations are so important. And there was a comment on one of my course evaluations: find someone else to teach this course. That's very humbling. So you have to reflect and think, okay, was this just a comment, or was there some legitimate purpose or reason behind this? So you really have to think about, what am I doing to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of my students and also the needs or the requirements that we have for accreditation. So that's taken me some time. But in terms of, so I started off as an instructor. I started working on my doctorate. Then I ended up getting officially, the assistant professor, and then eventually the associate professor, and just this last spring I got full professor, which is exciting. But in terms of the things so I started, I think I became the department chair, I want to say maybe 2014, I think. So it's been almost 10 years now. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I had to be talked into doing it because, again, I believe it or not, I don't always have confidence in myself. I always think maybe I can't do that. So I was hesitant in accepting it. And what I've been blessed with, I am blessed with so many amazing people. Where I am now is not because of me by myself. I've had, when I was teaching in the fifth grade, I had amazing principals, and I've also had really bad principals. So you learn from, what you're going to do and what you're not going to do.
Right.
But then coming here to Briarcliff, I've had so much support. I have to give a shout out to Sister Ruth because she was a chair before I was, and she was still here a couple of years while I was the chair, so she helped me so much. My team I work with, everybody here on campus is helpful. So it's the successes I've had are not just because of me. I've had so much support. So yeah, I have a lot of hats. I am in charge of new faculty orientation, which we start at the beginning of the year. I also have been on the Senate, but this is the second year I have not been on the Senate. I've been on many committees, many ad hoc committees. I stick my nose in everything, I guess. I don't know whether I want it or not. I love this place, and I want to make sure that if I can help in any way, shape, or form, I want to be there to help.
And you still teach.
And I teach, yes, I still teach. Right.
So, well,
Right.
Dr. Engle, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ford, very much.
Absolutely. Our guest today has been Dr. Theresa Engle, Chair of the Department of Education at Briarcliff. This has been Voices from the Cliff, a public affairs presentation of Briarcliff University. I'm Ford Clark.